Boys and girls, welcome aboard to your favorite type of video. It is going to be yet another tier list. This time we're going to be looking at the Japanese meta for set 6. And of course, if you're jumping ahead maybe 3 months, you'll know what this will look like for English. Or if you're watching this 3 months after I upload it, then you'll know what your current set meta looks like for English. So these are the decks, but what's going to be special about this one is that because of the resources that the Japanese Vanguard Zero has, we're going to be able to look at some other websites' tier lists before we actually make our own. So we're going to do that just now and look at 2 websites that we've looked at in the past. So these are going to be Gamewith as well as GameBox. Alright, so first things first is going to be Gamewith. So I'm going to link in the description, the websites that we use to look at these things. And of course, this website is like, it's very spread out so that they do a lot of different games. So this one is for Vanguard Zero, but they do like Shadowverse, like every game you can really imagine, honestly. Like they have really everything you could possibly think of. Like here you can see like Animal Crossing, Final Fantasy VII Remake, all those things. So there's a lot of stuff that they cover. But we're going to take a look at specifically what they put for this meta. So we're going to scroll down here. So tier 1, Gankyo Top, they write as just MLB, and they have these 5 different power ratings that I want to just quickly take a look at here. So here they have this little, I'll zoom in a bit just so it's a bit easier to see, but they have this little like pentagon that they put next to all the decks, and so each of these represents a different value. So the first one is power, and then this one is basically like Tenkai Ryoku, so it's like board presence, so how much it can deploy units and how much they stay there consistently every turn. So for MLB, for example, it can because of superior calls, but not too much. Then this one is going to be Taikyu, so it's basically like durability. So basically it's like, how would you say this? So how like many attacks it can kind of take, and generally like how kind of, I guess, defensive it is. And this is fairly high for MLB simply because, it has a 12k base, so that already means that they need to put down boosters to actually hit, so it can kind of, withstand hits in that sense. Although I feel like this one is a bit hard to describe in Vanguard, standards. Then this one is Antekan, so this is basically like how like safely it can do its plays. So I think this also refers to like how MLB can search out its pieces pretty easily, has a lot of filtering. Overall the plays that it wants to do, it can do them pretty safely. So that's why this is a high stat. And then this one is Bakhatsuryoku, which is like explosiveness. So how explosive are the plays? So like for MLB standards, it's basically like he has like that 2 crit permanently, the plays are big, it can finish the game quickly, so it's like an explosive deck, so it like gets a lot done really quickly. So those are the 5 scales. I'm not going to refer to them for every video, for every one of these, but just to explain how Gamewith looks at these things. So tier 1 is only MLB, and I generally do agree with this. Tier 2, they put first Azel. So this is the regular gold Azel. You can always click on these to see which deck list they put. So this one, has a lot of power and has a lot of the, how easy it is to deploy units because of Azel's limit break. Then you have Luquier, who is low on power but like high on the durability because of the fortress, as well as the ability to deploy units is also pretty good. The end is pretty balanced, so this is still tier 2. The end is very balanced in most ways. Shadow Paladins is literally like the perfect balance of like everything. Then you have Shadow Duke, so this one is a bit higher on the board presence, but then a bit lower on the other factors. And then we have Vermilion, who is really high on power and really high on the explosiveness, but a bit lower on the other scales. So this is what they put as tier 2. So tier 1 is MLB, and then they put Azel, Luquier, The End, Phantom Blasters, Shadow Duke, as well as Vermilion. So 6 decks in tier 2. And I would say all of these decks are like top meta contenders. Like all of these decks you will see on ladder all the time, and it's pretty safe to say that like they are very good decks. And MLB, of course, I do agree is the best deck in the game. Then this is where I might start disagreeing a bit. Tsukiyomi, in my opinion, is just here at the bottom of tier 2. Tsukiyomi was, I think, out of 8 of the top 8 Vanguard Championship players, 4 of them I think took Tsukiyomi. Because it's really strong. Of course, it has good defensive plays. Like, it's not so strong in terms of power, but being able to have this like win con that nobody can counter is really strong. So I think Tsukiyomi definitely should be up in tier 2 in my opinion. And then Battle Sisters just below. Battle Sisters are quite strong. I featured them, and as I said in the video, they are good. So I think that this should also be tier 2 in my opinion. We're gonna look at my tier list after this. Reiji here has high power and high explosiveness, but low on other factors. And of course, this deck can brick a fair bit, but it is fairly strong because it has crits on all of its rears. And then of course, this is tier 3 once again, just repeating. Indra Narukami is Yeah, I think tier 3 is a good place to put it. I generally don't think this deck is very strong. You have easy ways to like OTK your opponent, but it's like other decks that already have Inherent Crit do it the same way. Just like, okay, if you do hit, you win in one go, but I mean, I don't know. It feels like you're running a lot of meh cards just to make that work, and I'm not a big fan of it. Then we have the like Beast Deity Ashura Risers. So this is like the fusion of everything in Overgrappler. So basically this one is quite strong. I think it's a bit higher maybe than Indra and Reiji, but it is quite good still. Death Army I think is a bit too bricky right now. It has high power as they say here, but a bit lower on the other counts. This is like good stuff Kagero, so they put like Waterfall. Yes, I agree, it has fallen down to tier 3. I think that is correct. Gold Duke in my opinion is tier 2 for sure. I really don't think that this is tier 3 at all. I feel like, I don't know, like the deck is really strong, especially the 9 draw variant is really, really good. So I think that this deck definitely deserves to be up much higher. Risers, yeah, it's about the same. So this is pure Risers, not the fusion Risers that they have here. So this one, yeah, I guess has fallen to tier 3. Kyriel, sadly, Angels have fallen to tier 3 as well. They just don't do enough. Their numbers aren't high enough really to fight in this meta right now, and they need like the Metatron support I think to get better. And even then it's going to be a pretty big question mark. Great Nature I think is a bit higher than some of these decks. It is actually pretty damn good, and being able to use Locks and Leopold in one deck really means that the deck can do some crazy things, and so I like it a lot for that. And then finally Zyfried, so Spy Brothers at the bottom of tier 3. It is still pretty potent, but of course against Crossrides and MLB, which are like the most common things you run into on ladder, it does struggle to make numbers properly, so that's one thing to keep in mind. Then we have tier 4 here. They put Neonectar. I do agree, Neonectar just feels a bit too slow right now. It has good field deployment, and like it has good defense, and it has good, what was this last one? Ante-ryoku, so like stability in their plays, but yeah, they're really lacking in power, like really lacking in power. So Cecilia needs to come sooner. This is pure Pelennor. I think a lot of these decks we can ignore. Like Pelennor goes in every gold deck, so it's not really its own deck. It's Pelennor is just something you splash into almost every gold deck if you can. Coco sadly is outclassed by the other variants quite a lot. Garmor has seen better days. Locks in my opinion goes into Great Nature anyway. This is the only DP variant, I agree. This is tier 4 sadly right now, which is not very good until Great Daisha comes next month. Ergodiel also too slow. Beast Deities, not enough pieces right now. Dark Regulars, Reiji is better. Blau sadly also, I mean, they can still randomly blow people up here and there, but like overall this deck just lacks and also relies on triggers all the time, struggles a bit against crossride numbers. Only the Vanguard column usually hits crossride numbers properly without boost, or with boost rather, but like the rears struggle on their own. And then Kokaitis sadly didn't really get that much better with new support. And then we have, you know, some of the other decks, and they have tier 5, you know, like these decks that, I mean, we're not even going to categorize, so this is just what they put. But that's, you know, a lot of budget decks, mostly just budget decks here really. So this is how Gamewith does it. So now let's take a look at GameBox. Alright, so here is GameBox. So they have like a similar rating system. They put like damage here as well, which is a nice little, you know, extra addition. So of course the only tier 1 deck is Majesty, Lord Blaster. And then they put the End. I would say this is the next best deck. The End is the instant MLB counter, and therefore it is quite good. This is Phantom Duke. So Phantom Duke is of course quite strong. And then Kirif Azel, and then they put Kirif Azel, and then this is the other, I think this is the which deck is this? This is the Spring Breeze Messenger Azel. So basically I think this one, if I'm not mistaken, is the like self-damage, go crazy, get limit break kind of thing. So I think that this also works well with Criff, but then of course you have to, I mean with Criff, but you have to dedicate 4 slots of Gareth and 4 slots of Bowmains, which you might not want to. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Anyway, moving on. We have regular Phantom Blaster, then Vermilion, and then Luquier. So everyone kind of agrees that Luquier is tier 2 from these new decks. Just about the, like, Duke and Luquier are the only things from this new set that actually kind of break into the meta properly. And then going forward, again, this is Duke Azel. I personally think this deck with 9 draws is tier 2, but I mean, some people don't agree. Then we have Indra once again, Death Army, Battle Sisters, Soul Charge Reiji. So it's interesting. This is, feels like it's a lot lower than it is for Gamewith. And then Shamsiel Ergodiel. I think that deck is not a good variant of the deck. I don't think you need Ergodiel. It's too slow. Then this is of course Maidens, so this is actually a bit higher I think than what Gamewith put. And then Locks Leopold. This is the right deck variant. I do agree with this. And then we have Tsukiyomi. Again, I think this is a bit too low. This is Garmor Majesty, so they separate that as a separate deck. I do agree Garmor doesn't like, putting in Garmor is only good for the mirror match, generally, in Kagero. So I feel like it's not really worth dedicating slots to. And then tier 4 is Cocytus, Overlord, Waterfall, like, good stuff. This is Blazing Flare at the end, so it's like a lot of these like hybrids that aren't that good. So yeah, I like how they put Dudley Dan as a separate deck as well. So this is kind of like a lot of the budget decks. Sadly, Enigma is very low now. But yeah, so this is kind of what it looks like. So now that you have a sort of picture of what the other websites put their tier list to, let's look at what I put it as. Alright, so here we go. We have our little tier maker thing here. So of course, first things first, MLB tier 1. This is like uncontestable. You cannot argue against this. MLB is the best deck. It's been the best deck ever since March when it came out, and it's really been dominating everything like possible, honestly. Like it's really, really strong. It's super fast, it's just very consistent, and overall it's just hard to beat, really. Tsukuyomi, I personally, like I said, put it in tier 2 still. There's a reason why 4 out of the top 8 players took Tsukuyomi as their part of their 3-deck lineup, and even though it didn't see much play, I think it's still, like, it probably did come in handy throughout that day, and just the existence of Tsukuyomi in somebody's 3-deck lineup is going to be pretty scary. So I think Tsukuyomi, still tier 2, like, it's a strong deck, and it will stay strong. Pacific needs support. I think next month we're getting Coral. It hasn't been officially announced yet, but we are getting Bermuda support next month, so it should be like Coral and probably Pacifica Crossride. So this might actually shoot up a fair bit, depending on how they buff or nerf the units. Good stuff, Kagero. In my opinion, like tier 3 maybe, but I personally would put it in tier 4. I think it just doesn't do much right now. Enigma, sadly, also not doing much. Zyfried can go in tier 3, simply because it's still, like, it's strong against things that aren't Crossride or MLB. So that way, like, there's still most of the decks in the meta are 11k base, so then Spikes can do some stuff, but otherwise, not so much. The End, definitely the top of tier 2. I kind of want to put it like this, but in all honesty, MLB really is just standing in a place of its own, and it's really hard to contest it there. Shadows, I think, are the next best deck. Neo Nectar I would put as tier 3, simply because it does have good defensive plays. It really goes through its deck pretty easily, and therefore it finds the pieces it wants, and just the only lacking thing is power, really, it's just the power. Then, this is the Nova Hybrid, so Risers and Beast Deities, so I think that deck is pretty good, but it would still go in tier 3 for me. Sadly, Angels also tier 3, just don't have the power to properly do things right now. Great Nature goes around here, I would say, so it's kind of like, I guess tier 3 for me is like, if I'm gonna have to label it, MLB is its own thing. Tier 2 is decks I would be comfortable taking into tournament, taking into ranked, you know, properly climbing with. And then tier 3 is the stuff that I'm like, if you're really good at these decks, I would climb with them, but if you're just looking for a deck to randomly pick up, I would not. So that's how I kind of see it. Azel, definitely tier 2. I think goes a bit like this maybe, because it just cheats out, really, like, your opponent can destroy your entire board and Azel just brings it all back. It filters really well, so you have a higher chance of triggering. Like, you have so much plussing going on thanks to, like, Vivian, you have a countercharger, you have so much stuff going on in this deck that it feels really, really good for that reason. Vermilion, in my opinion, is also really, really strong. Of course, Alan showed us that it is one of the best decks right now to look out for, because it has a very cool playstyle. You know, it can build good columns. Dungaree puts in a lot of work in this deck as well, and overall it's just like, it can win against a lot of random matchups, and the fact that Vermilion has its own like plus 3k on attack, you know, things like that, just make it really, really strong. Make it really, really strong. And then, so here, as you can see, I've separated the Dukes. So this one is the Shadow Duke, and this one is the Gold Duke. And I put Gold Duke as tier 2. I think Gold Duke is actually really, really good, simply because it's like, it has so much board presence, and at the same time, it's a non-hitting restander, which is the first that this game has had so far, and it's really strong for that reason, because even if your opponents, if you get your opponent to 4 or 5, and then you just go in with Duke, chances are you're gonna get at least get through all their RPGs or win that turn, and then you can win next turn if anything. So I think the deck is really strong, and it's just like we saw on the Asia Circuit tournament stream, like this deck is strong. It really is strong in my opinion, so I would say it's tier 2. And then this is the Shadow Duke, so I think this goes somewhere here, maybe. I think I don't know, like, these 3 decks are really next to each other to me. Like, they're all really, really close by, so I don't know how I would really order this. They're all just very, very nearby for me, so that's kind of how I put it. Battle Sisters, this one's a bit hard, because Battle Sisters feels like it can fight with Tsukuyomi, but I think it's just a little bit below simply because the plus 4k that Fromage gets can be worked around, and a lot of decks do have answers to it. So I think that because of that, like Shadows can disable it, Kagero can disable it, Narukami can disable it, like so many decks can disable it. So I think for that reason it lacks just a little bit, so it's a bit unfortunate there. Then Death Army, I don't know, I think this would go like here, somewhere here. It's strong, but it just doesn't feel like it has enough that can push it to be strong enough. And so the crossfight buffs are amazing, but just not amazing enough, I guess. That's kind of the issue there. Then we have Blade Wings, I think go around here, maybe barely here at the bottom of tier 2, where it's like, I don't know, it feels like it's a bit bricky. It feels like, I know people in the comments said like, oh, like look at Fluffy's build, look at Fluffy's build. And Fluffy's build is really good, but I feel like the deck still has a lot of instability in that sense, and it can definitely win, and it can definitely, like, you know, do well, but I think that there's still quite a bit lacking that makes me want to put it, like, at the top of tier 3, something like that. Luquier, I think, goes somewhere around here. Luquier just has a lot of good stuff going on for it. You have good board presence, you have on-hit combos that get you multi-attacks, you know, with Purple Trapezes and Alice, and then you also have Luquier's ability to just like reset, like your opponent takes out your board, Luquier's Limit Break resets the entire board. So it's good for that reason. And then the Fortress, if you run it, you know, it does give you that defensive play, but then you kind of lose out on offense. So if you want to play the more offensive build, you play with like the Crimson Beast Tamer and things like that. And so I think it's pretty good. I'll maybe even put it somewhere around here because of how stable this deck really is. So I think it is definitely quite strong. And then Indra, I personally don't think Indra is that good. I think it's like here, it's just, I don't know, really piece reliant and not really doing that much. And so I think that Indra really just, like, you have Vermilion right there. Like, why would you don't need to play Indra right now. You really don't. And then finally Kokaitis as tier 4. I think that the Grand Blue support came a bit too late. If it came last month, maybe it would have been a bit better, but right now, things are just, it's a little bit too late. Just a little bit too late. So this is how I see the Japanese meta right now. So of course, next set, we're going to be getting support, expected to get support for Dimension Police, Bermuda Triangle, as well as Aquaforce coming in. So that will probably shake things up. We're going to see, I hope that, you know, we see Dimension Police shoot up to like tier 2. That would be a good spot to be in. And then, of course, Bermuda also could shoot up to tier 2 pretty easily, depending on what kind of support they get. So both of these decks are looking to go up. I think Coral will definitely help to push this deck as well. So we'll see what kind of support they actually bring. Definitely not going to be break rights just yet. I think it's too early for Prism, but that definitely would be very strong if they brought that out early, but I don't think that's going to be the case. And then Aquaforce, probably going to be around here. Gonna depend, really gonna depend on how it plays out. And, you know, just the mechanics of Zero are not very friendly to Aquaforce at the base level, so we're gonna see how that actually plays out. And then for Dimension Police, like I said, probably gonna shoot up to tier 2. I think just because of Great Dayusha's static crit, it's gonna be the same as like any other static crit deck, like MLB. Indra, I guess, technically is a static crit deck too, but it's so much harder to get its win condition off than it is for Great Dayusha. So I think it's going to be pretty interesting to see where that goes. But for now, this is what the meta looks like, in my opinion, for Japanese. And I mean, kind of for the English players here, like, I guess that gives you kind of a insight on which of your decks that you have right now are going to be good. And of course, next set, you definitely want to be building these 3 decks, like at least one of them. And I highly suggest MLB. The only way to dethrone MLB right now is probably to nerf it, and not necessarily nerf MLB himself, but maybe the support pieces. You know, maybe make Wingle Brave Counterblast 2. That honestly, like, neuters the deck. It's gonna be pretty sad if that happens. Or like, I guess, like, how else would they even do that? Like, it feels like Wingle Brave is what makes the deck really good, because otherwise, like, as long as you can search out your Blaster Dark and Blaster Blade, you're pretty much fine. So then it's like, you'd have to take away MLB's extra power. I don't know, it's really hard to nerf this deck. It's really strong on its own, and you know, it's like the only real answer to it is the end because of Tejas, and then like Shadows are just like very well rounded, so they can fight against everything. So that's kind of how I see it. But I think definitely tier 1 and 2 are the best decks in the game right now, and the decks that you should expect to see on ladder. Like, I think these, like 9 decks actually, that's quite a lot, are all tournament relevant for tournaments, relevant for ranked. You can climb legend with these, and you can also like just expect to do well. Whereas, as I said, tier 3, they are good decks, but you need to be like the master of your craft to play them efficiently in ladder and actually expect to climb well with them. Whereas these ones, I think they're just not viable right now. I think you need to wait for more support, and sadly for Kakaitis, it's not gonna happen for a while. For 2 of these decks, it's gonna happen very, very soon, but yeah, that's kind of how it is. So yeah, that's basically it for this meta analysis, my tier list for the set 6 of the Japanese meta. Let me know what you guys think, and also links to the websites that we used at the beginning of the video will be in the description, so you can check those out as well. But on that note, that's gonna be it for me today, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.